The United Nations has asked Nigerian government to immediately release Nnamdi Kanu unconditionally and pay him adequate compensations for the arbitrary violation of his fundamental human rights. So it's also recommended that government officials responsible for the torture meted out on the IPOB leader be investigated and punished. How do you see the federal government responding to this?
It's difficult to predict how exactly they are going to respond. But of course, the government will try its best to defend itself, but it has to defend itself within the ambit of United Nations conventions. This whole problem emanated from the forceful arrests and relocation of Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya to Nigeria. There are internationally guaranteed rights that the UN working group that indicted the UN working group on the detention, arbitrary detention, has indicted Nigeria and Kenya of. Ideally, if you want to put someone on trial, a fugitive who ran away from your country, if you want to put him on trial and he's in another country, he has to go through an extradition trial. In this case, there was no extradition trial in place. Nnamdi Kanu didn't go through any form of extradition trial, yet he was forcefully brought to Nigeria, and Nigeria now is facing trial before a federal high court. As far as the working group of the UN Human Rights Council is concerned, this was a gross violation of Nnamdi Kanu's rights. As far as they are concerned, Nigeria and Kenya stand indicted for the manner they brought Nnamdi Kanu to the country. It violates international convention, violates international law to forcefully drag a man out of another country and bring him to his country to face trial in the manner in which Nnamdi Kanu was brought to Nigeria by force. So, for this reason, Nigeria stands indicted. My own position is both Kenya and Nigeria are signatories to this convention. So, they are morally obligated to comply, because if you are not signatories to the convention, then the content of the convention is not binding on you. But if you made up your mind that, look, this is good for me and my people, and you sign up to it, it is then incumbent on you to comply. The UN Human Rights Council itself is a product of the United Nations resolution. So it then means that as a country affiliated to the United Nations, we have to comply with these resolutions. And from the tone of this 16-page report, it is clear that they mean business, because the working group is asking Nigeria to get back to it within 6 months of receiving this indictment, showing it how it is complying, showing the UN agency how it is, the UN working group, how it is complying with the directive handed over. It's also asking that Nigerian officials who are involved in the illegal arrest of Kanu without him being subjected to an extradition trial should be punished. And they are interested in knowing every step of the way what we are doing to comply with his resolution. So, and it is saying that it will not stop at that, that it would take further actions against Nigeria. Now, we don't know what actions could be taken against Nigeria. We don't know yet. There are all kinds of options open to them, but as I said earlier, if you are a signatory to a UN convention, a UN charter, then you are obligated, at least morally and sensibly, to comply with the content of that, that UN convention or UN charter. This is where this has left us. As for when the working group on arbitrary detention under the UN Human Rights Council sent a query to Nigerian authorities and the Kenyan authorities, the Kenyans refused to answer, but the Nigerian officials answered. But the UN working group on arbitrary detention was not convinced by the explanations offered by the Nigerian authorities, especially on the whether Kanu has committed treason and so deserved the treatment that he got. They were not convinced at all, and it's not difficult to understand why they were not convinced. As far as they are concerned, based on international law, based on international convention, once you want somebody extradited to face trial in your country, you got to let that person go through an extradition trial. The court of the land would then determine whether to release him or not. How would Nigerians feel if the Americans just stormed Abuja and grabbed Abba Kyari, the highly decorated police officer who was accused of working hand in hand with some of the most notorious advanced fee fraudsters in the world. One of those advanced fee fraudsters is a man from Nigeria who was said to have met Abba Kyari in Dubai. The Americans have their indictment in place, but they have not stormed our country to say they are going to forcibly abduct Abba Kyari and take him to the US to face trial. I know the Americans have done that in the past, and when they did that, they were roundly condemned. I can't, as a person, condemn America for abducting Manuel Noriega, the former president of Panama, and some of the other world leaders that they had taken prisoner, and then say that my country did the right thing in the way it handled the Kano matter. Whatever is right, whatever is wrong is wrong. If the UN convention is that a person should undergo extradition trial when a request is made for that person, then that should be the law. That should be the way people are taken out of another country to face trial in the country where they are deemed to have infringed on the laws of the land. So we didn't do that in the case of Kanu. We took him by force. We subjected him to inhumane conditions and brought him to Nigeria, where he's now facing trial. What we did was against international laws. No matter what anyone feels, it was against international law, and that is why this indictment has come. And Nigeria must not take steps that will cause it to be treated as a pariah nation, that will cause some of our partners that we cherish to begin to see us as a lawless nation as a nation that does not respect the UN charters and the UN conventions.
Yeah.